Can you all hear me? Right. So today, right now, we are in our biology class. In the morning, we had the another two. So in the morning, we had the chemistry class. So I'll start sharing the screen first. Now, as you can see here, you can see the screen. I'm sharing to you. Let's go through the syllabus. Right. First of all, let us go through the syllabus. What are the contents that need to be covered? Just like we did our in our the first chemistry class, right? Mm. So now these are the main topics that we are planning to cover. The nature and variety of living organisms. The nature and variety of living organisms. Right. So under the nature and variety of living organisms, we have the main topic characteristics of living organisms. Right. Characteristics of living organisms. Now, under the characteristics of organisms, also we have several topics. Now, when we are discussing them, we will discuss about them. So, we are going to the syllabus. Then, the second topic will be structure and function of living organisms. Structure and function in living organisms. Right? Structure and function in living organisms. So, under that, we are discussing the topics levels of organizations. So you have done it previously, like cells, tissues, systems, and organisms, right? Levels of organisms, levels of organizations, cell structure, and also uh, right, cell structure and biological molecules, movement of substances into and out of cells, movement of substances into and out of cells. Okay. Movement of substances into and out of cells, nutrition, respiration, gas exchange. I hope you guys are writing this with me. Without your writing and taking down your notes, I mean, just looking at a presentation or looking at a printed note won't do any good for you, right? So if I can do the writing, you should be also do it, right, with a pen and a paper. I could have given just a presentation and just tell something and just in the class, but I want you to engage and write. So if you're writing your notes with me, so if I can, I am doing the hard work. Writing on a screen is not an easy task while teaching. You just have to take the notes. So I am also doing it, right? So you can't say I'm writing too fast, right? Or things like that, because if I can write on screen like this, you should be able to do it better than me on a piece of paper, right? And if you want time, I can let you have some time. But if you are not talking, I can't. I don't know whether you are needing any more time to write it, right? So since you guys are all attending international schools, I think you should be able to write better than me, faster than me, since you guys are writing on a piece of paper, right? Without writing, I don't think you will have better chances. Why? Because you will have to study a lot. But when you're writing and listening and doing it, it gets more into your head, right? Presentation stuff, even in universities, good universities. I'm not talking about this, tuition stalls, tuition mark, no, not tuition, university markets. There are universities like tuition classes, right? There are schools like that also. So I'm not talking about that university. I'm talking about well-established state universities and especially universities like Colombo University, University of Monato, Peradeniya, and Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge. And you just look at their YouTube video. Even in a physical class, they're writing on the chalkboard, writing on a blackboard, writing on a green board. All the professors are writing on the board, not because they don't have projectors, not because they don't have presentation skills or presentations. That is the standard way of teaching, special science subjects, right? So, because when you're writing it, and you can, so that's, so our brain can understand and process more. You are engaged more, right? So I want you to write down these notes. Right? Otherwise, any person can do just make a presentation and just read it to you, especially for a subject like biology, right? I don't think that you will need a teacher in that case. Just have to just read, just like reading a book. When you're studying notes, you are looking at a printed note. That is not my way of doing it, right? So write it with me, and when you are studying, it will help you a lot. Right? I'm telling you for a reason with my experience. Even at the level, this is how things are happening. Even at the university level, because I'm working with universities also, this is how things are done. Even in physical class, writing on a chalkboard, a blackboard, right? Okay. Gas exchange, transport systems, transport systems, excretion, coordination and response, coordination and response, right? So these are the topics that will be covered under structure and function of living organisms. Under these also, there are subtopics. So when we are discussing the lesson, we will discuss. So we discuss what topic one, topic two, third topic, reproduction and inheritance. Right, so we will do small calculations on genetics, how genes are exchanged, reproduction and inheritance. Right? Reproduction and inheritance. Under that, we are discussing again on reproduction and inheritance. Reproduction and inheritance. Fourth, ecology and environment. Fourth topic, ecology and very interesting topic, right? Last, ecology and now remember the nature in Edexcel biology. So you don't need to memorize everything. Most of the research based question they give you that comprehension. So when we are doing papers, you will even in A levels, mostly comprehension. They look at your analytical skills, how to apply your knowledge, basic knowledge, right? Basic knowledge means not every little letter and word. Basic knowledge you need to tackle a real world scenario, a research question, right? Just like comprehension kind of questions are there, especially in edXels. So that's the main difference between Cambridge and edXels, right? And the environment, right? Ecology and the environment. Under that, the organism in the environment. So we are learning about the nature, organisms in the environment, organism in the environment, feeding relationships, cycles within the ecosystems, human influence on the environment, human influence on the environment, right? Human influence on the environment. So with that, so under these also there are subtopics, right? So when we are learning them, we will be discussing them. So we are discussing all the work in grade 9 and 10 both. Fifth, use of biological resources. Of biological resources. Under that, food production, selective breeding, selective breeding. So selective breeding on of organisms, mainly plants, to get new organisms, new varieties having the features that we expect to have. Right? Genetic modification. Genetic modification means genetic engineering. Engineering. And finally cloning. So these are the topics that will be discussed. Okay. Right. So this is the whole syllabus, nothing much, right? Now we will move on to the first one, characteristics of living organisms. Under that, living organisms. Under that, again, characteristics of living organisms. Of living organisms. Under that, again, characteristics of living organisms. Okay. So let's start. Now remember, now it's like a bucket list. To call a thing a living thing, so in the middle school also you must have studied these things. To call something a living thing, these features must be there. If a thing does not have at least one of these features, we cannot call it a living thing. It's a bucket list, so we have to tick it. Whether it is that this feature is there, whether this feature is not there, right? So it is called characteristics. At different levels, at different syllabuses, we are learning different things. But remember, at your level, O level, we are discussing altogether 8 features. So these are the features. Movement. Now, when we are talking about movement, you must be wondering, okay, we are moving, animals are moving. That movement is called mobility. Walking. Mobility is only there in animals. Yeah, animals are living thing. What about plants? Later we are discussing again on this. What about plants then? Do they move? Do they walk? No, they can't walk. But the what can I tell here is depends on the direction of the sun. Depends on the direction of the gravity. Roots are responding. The direction of the roots in the plants, in the soil. The directions are changing. The direction of the flowers at the focusing at the sun, changing. Leaves are, I mean, there are some species of plants. When you touch it, they respond and they move. Leaves. So movement is there. No mobility in plants, but still they move. Right? Flowers at the sun, sunflowers. That is the plants. There are two different types of movement: walking, running, and movement. Right? Another one. How do you call something is living? Respiration. What is mean by respiration? Respiration is not breathing. Keep that in mind. Respiration is not breathing. Breathing means inhaling and exchange. Air exchange. No. Respiration means at the there's a place in our cells called mitochondria. Power generating uh, organelle. So inside the cells also there are specific parts. At mitochondria, right? Mitochondria. In the mitochondria in cells, respiration means energy production. How? When the vehicles are moving, for the vehicle to move, energy must be produced from fuel. That energy in the fuel is released, that energy is taken by the vehicle and the vehicle is moving. But here, in living organisms, so for us to move and to grow and to run, to walk, we need energy. That is why we need fuel. Fuel is our food, right? So vehicles are petrol and diesel, we have food. Food is releasing energy. We are calling in calorie burning, right? Calories are burned, energy is released. Ah. Now, food is not getting burned itself. To burn, you need what? Oxygen. Food, by combining with oxygen, energy is released, right? Okay, now remember, respiration means food is getting burned to release energy. So later we will discuss further on respiration. Remember that. That is why we eat. That is why we need food. Without food, without carbohydrates, without glucose, we can't release energy, right? Without glucose, there is no energy. And that is why we breathe. Without breathing, we can't tell oxygen in to our cells. That is why we need to breathe and we need to eat. Without these two, we can't do respiration. So it means respiration is needed for living organisms. The respiration cannot happen without food. Food means we should eat. So living thing must eat. So we call it as what? We call it in general nutrition. Nutrition means basically eating food. Why? For the respiration. And oxygen is needed. So oxygen is taken from breathing. So we don't call it breathing. Huh? We don't call it breathing. We called. Huh? That is why we breathe. Right? Okay. Without breathing, inhaling and exhaling, we can't take nutrition. Right? So breathing is not taken in as a live process. Why? When you take a bacteria, we can't see breathing is happening, right? So, but nutrition must be there. Bacteria are not breathing the way we are breathing, but still it is taking oxygen to the bacterial cells without breathing. So, breathing is not necessary for other organisms. Without breathing, there are some ways for them to take oxygen in. So that is why breathing is not here. But nutrition is still there. Without nutrition, there is no food. Remember now how all these things are connected to each other, right? Another thing is you can poke a person next to you and tell sensitivity. They should be able to feel a living thing. They all are sensitive. Sensitivity. Huh? Now you must be wondering, okay, animals they sense. What about plants? Plants can also sense, right? For example, at night, some plants they wither, leaves are withering because they are sensitive to light. Plant wither, and again in the morning they again light. And the blossoms of flowers, sensitivity. And there are some varieties of species of plants when you touch it, the leaves are getting withered. That is sensitivity. So even plants having sense, they also can sense. but their sensory system is different from us. They don't have nerves, they have plant hormones, and their sensitivity is kind of slower than us. Our sensitivity is kind of faster. So plants can also feel in a different way. Plants, they also, leaves they wither, right? Leaves wither. An example. So later we are discussing further on this. So sensitivity is there, right? Other thing is control. So control may be harder for you to grasp. So later we are discussing control means. So right now I will tell you, you sweat. Sweating. Why? To control the body temperature. Sweat in animals, right? Sweating is for what? To control the body temperature. Without it, you die, right? So even in plants, there are controlling mechanisms, right? Temperature, pH. You must have heard pH in science, in chemistry. pH is also control in our bodies around 7 pH. If the temperature is going up, we have fever. Something is going wrong. Control out of control. That is why when we have fever, it is an indication our system is not functioning properly. So fever is a good indicator of being sick. So it means our bodily functions are not happening properly. Fever, loss of control in body temperature. So later we are discussing further, right? Control. And also growth. You grow taller, fatter. Plants are also during the whole life cycle, they grow. Growth is there, right? So later we will explain later, discuss further growth. And the other thing is reproduction must be there. Otherwise, it cannot, any living organism, they can't live forever. So they have mechanisms. They are passing on their genes to another organism and they die. That is called reproduction. Reproduction happens in many ways, depends on the species and the animal. Plants reproduce, animals reproduce in different ways. Reproduction vital, right? So in detail, we are discussing about reproduction. Excretion. Excretion means what? You release from your body what is harmful for you. You eat, you breathe, you respirate. What is not needed, the byproducts you release because it is bad for your body. So excretion is there, release of chemicals from the body. So all the living things must do it. The excretion for of humans are what? Urine. In animals, urine is an excretion. Urine contains ammonia and much more, ammonia, urea, which is toxic to our body. Urine contains urea, ammonia, produced as a byproduct of protein digestion, and also carbon dioxide gas also an excretion. You release it out. Carbon dioxide is bad for us. You release the excretion, not only urine. Sometimes even water as sweat. In urine you have water. In sweat you have water. Too much of water, sometimes you excrete. So even water is an excretion, right? And we have discussed around seven, right? Final one, nutrition, food. Uh, nutrition we discussed, right? All later there, right? Food. Okay. So we are in detail. We are discussing about these things. One no other, right? That is under characteristics of living organisms. Nutrition, right? Right. What is nutrition in your own words? I will give you 5 minutes. What do you think? In few words, try to explain. Write and send in the group. Right. So if I don't see any answer, I may have to either show yourself with a video on, right? You may either you have to send your answers. So you guys are not talking that okay with me now. You're always I like if you can move, talk and interact with me. But if you are not talking, that's fine. But send me the answers. But if I don't see an answer, you will have to show up yourself. Right? I don't know whether you are there or not. No. Okay. In your own words, try to explain in few words. What is nutrition with your knowledge? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Um, I added extra parts. I'll read one thing. A process providing energy to cells by food, breaking down food particles or by. Uh, okay, good. Huh? Nutrition means the diet. Yeah, yeah. So not bad, right? So I will give my explanation for this. Uh, right, nutrition means so as you said in your descriptions, right? Now, organisms must obtain food to provide energy, right? Uh, and materials they require to grow and develop, right? And okay, it's a process which provides energy to carry out life processes, and materials to grow and develop because we need what proteins to grow structures, right? Cells, not only energy, material because our bones are containing calcium, our cells are containing proteins. So we need material also and material to grow and develop. Grow and develop. In this growth, not just about size, it is also about maintaining, right? Maintenance is also part of growth, right? It's a process when process which provides energy to carry out life processes, right? And material to grow and develop, right? Life processes, right? Process which provides energy to carry out life processes and material to grow and develop. So that is called nutrition, right? Now nutrition can again be divided into I told you in plants. How it is happening in plants? Um, Now remember, now plants making food themselves. Animals, they can't make the food themselves. So that's the difference. In plants, they make food inside them and consume. Right? So they make food inside them mainly by photosynthesis. Right? So plants use sunlight. So not only sunlight, you need other more things, right? Sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to produce what? Food. Food means glucose and a very vital byproduct is yeah, and oxygen also. So actually we are taking the glucose they are making and the oxygen plants are releasing for our respiration and for our nutrition. Plants can survive of their own, right? To do this process, they use sunlight to get the energy, carbon dioxide from where? From the atmosphere, water from the soil, right? But when it comes to animals, we can't do it of our own. In animals, animals consume other animals, right, to obtain energy and the nutrition they need, right? Consume other living organisms as food, right? So plants are consuming other organisms as food. Okay, that is how plant animals are getting the nutrition, right? Now in plant, this process is called what? Photosynthesis. It's called photosynthesis. That is the process. Hmm. And in animals, right? When they consume the other living organisms, they are break down larger molecules into simpler molecules. When they are consuming, what happens? Break large molecules. Large molecules, they are large molecules in food. Example, proteins, carbs, carbohydrates, lipids, and other more stuff. They are breaking down, right? They break large molecules, proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, right, into simpler molecules. Into simpler molecules. So when the large molecules are broken down simpler molecules, what are the simple molecules? Converting these large ones into simple molecules. That is happening when the food is being digested. So what are the simple molecules? Simple molecules. Carbon dioxide and water. Again, it is taken by plants, a cycle, right? we break the larger molecules into simpler molecules. Simpler molecules are again taken up by plant and make larger molecules. Plants are making larger molecules. We are breaking larger molecules into simpler molecules. The simpler molecules we are making, plants are taking back and making larger molecules. And again, we are consuming it and breaking into smaller molecules. Again, plants are taking that smaller molecules into larger molecules. That is a cycle. The cycle needs energy. That energy is taken by the from the sunlight. All are connected, right? Okay. Uh, right. So simple molecules are carbon dioxide and water, and also so you don't need to know there are much more, not just carbon dioxide and water. Amino acids. Amino acids are when you break proteins, you get amino acids, right? No need to learn. Remember this amino acids and fatty acids, right? So also these things are made. These are very kind of smaller molecules. Since they are smaller, why it is important? Why they are broken down into smaller molecules at the digestion? At the digestion, that is called digestion. At the digestion, larger molecules are converted into simpler molecules. What are larger? Proteins and carbohydrates. These proteins and carbohydrate lipids are converted into these. These are smaller molecules. These molecules are smaller, therefore it can be absorbed easily to bloodstream. So that can be absorbed to the bloodstream. Since they are smaller, can get absorbed into bloodstream, right? And then it can be used for our life processes, right? So that can be easily absorbed into bloodstream. Okay, that is why you need digestion. Without digestion, just because we consume larger molecules like protein, carbohydrates, and lipids, it is not digested, it is not absorbed into our bloodstream. If it is not absorbed into our bloodstream, no use. No. So that is why these are being digested. Huh? Digestion is happening in our digestion tract, right? Stomach, large intestine, small intestine. So at those places, digestion is happening. Digestion and absorbed into that, right? Right. So these simple molecules can be used to make later can be used for growth, repair, and energy production at the respiration. So these smaller molecules absorbed into bloodstream can be later used for repair, growth, and energy production. Can be later used for growth, repair, and energy production. Can be later used for growth, repair, and energy production. Okay, so that is about nutrition in plants and animals. So next day I'll end the class for tomorrow. I was planning only on a 1 hour class, right? Because we were initial planning on yesterday. So today, since we shifted the class to this time, I can only do 1 hour class. So next day onwards, we can have 1.5 hour class. So next day we are on respiration. Right. Okay. So remember me to start from here. All right. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.